The chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with calm voices and polite arguments. Thousands of lights hung over the hall, shining on the many alien faces seated in perfect rows. To them, this was another normal day of endless debates about trade, mining rights, and border disputes. In the center of the great circle, a hologram showed a small blue planet with a single moon. It was Earth. No one seemed impressed. "They have sent another message," said a thin, silver-skinned delegate from the Solar Union. His voice was slow and tired, as if reading a list. "Humans report heavy losses on their outer colonies. They request immediate help under Article 9. A soft laugh came from the other side of the chamber. It was the Vargan representative, a tall being with 4 arms and scales that shone like metal. His sharp teeth showed as he spoke. "They request help because they are weak. They do not belong in the outer rings. They are new to the stars. They should stay near their home." Some murmurs of agreement spread across the hall. A few species shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. The council chair, a round creature with a face like soft glass, raised a glowing hand for silence. "The matter will be considered. Let us move to the next issue." No vote was taken. No action was promised. The record simply noted the complaint and moved on. For the council, this was a small matter among many. But far away, on Earth, it was not small at all. It was life and death. On the blue planet, every screen carried the same images. Burning stations. Broken ships. People screaming as colonies fell. The Vargan Empire had attacked without warning, and the humans had nothing strong enough to stop them. Their warships were old, their fleets too small. Outposts fell one after another. Billions watched the news with fear and anger in their hearts. In the city of New Geneva, the highest leaders of Earth sat in a secure room deep underground. The air was heavy with silence as Admiral Ross placed his hands on the table. His uniform was simple, but his eyes were cold and sharp. "We sent 3 messages to the council," said Ross. "They gave no answer. They will do nothing." President Hale looked tired, but her voice was firm. "What do you suggest?" Ross pressed a control and the screen lit up with maps of the stars. Red zones showed Vargan fleets moving toward human colonies. Blue lines marked the few ships Earth still had. The difference was clear and terrible. "They think we will surrender," Ross said. "They think humans are like the others who bent the knee. They are wrong." One of the ministers spoke in fear. "But we cannot fight an empire. Their fleets number in the thousands." Ross looked at him without a blink. "Then we do not fight their fleets. We destroy them in a way they cannot imagine." The room grew quiet. Every face turned toward the admiral. Slowly, he brought up another image. It was a design hidden for decades. A giant warship, larger than any ship Earth had ever built. Its frame was black and sharp like a blade. Around it were names of weapons that no one in the council had ever seen before. The letters at the top were bold and clear: Project Hammer of Dawn. Gasps filled the room. Some stared in shock, others in disbelief. "This was banned," whispered one minister. "We agreed never to build these. We agreed when we believed the galaxy would protect us," Ross said coldly. "Now we stand alone. Either we rise or we fall." President Hale rose from her chair. Her eyes moved across the room, meeting each pair of eyes one by one. "And what happens if we fail?" Ross gave the smallest hint of a smile. "Then there will be nothing left for them to take." The president looked at the screen again. Her hands were steady, her voice stronger than ever. "Then do it. All of it. No more waiting." Ross nodded once. His voice was low but carried power that shook the room. "Yes, Madam President." Across the planet, secret codes were sent. In the dark of space, old shipyards came alive. Engines roared as workers moved like shadows, building something that would change the galaxy forever. Mining ships tore at asteroids, pulling out every piece of metal they could find. Factories glowed with heat as machines forged weapons that no alien could dream of. Every scientist who had worked on the old projects returned in silence, knowing what was at stake. The world outside saw nothing. The news kept speaking of losses and prayers for peace. But deep inside the hidden vaults of Earth, the true answer was being made. It was not peace. It was not surrender. It was something far greater and far more terrible. One message appeared on a private channel, marked with the highest level of secrecy. It was sent to only 12 people. The words were short, simple, and cold as iron: Phase 1 complete. Begin retaliation. Far beyond the bright cities of Earth, deep in the cold emptiness of space, the first shadows of war began to move. The old shipyards that had slept for years now burned with new life. Lights glowed on their long arms as machines pulled steel and titanium into shape. Giant frames stretched across the stars as men and women worked in silence, their faces set with grim purpose. In the asteroid belts, fleets of mining craft swarmed over the rocks like hungry insects. Explosions flashed as drills cut deep into the iron-rich cores. Engines groaned, pulling mountains of ore into cargo bays. Nothing was wasted. Every grain of metal was precious. Every piece would become armor, weapons, or the skin of a new warship. On the surface of Mars, in the red dust, hidden factories roared like caged beasts. Their walls shook as machines forged the bones of something huge and powerful. The workers never spoke of what they saw. They signed oaths that bound them in silence. To speak of the work meant prison or worse, but none cared. Every soul who labored there had seen the same pictures as the rest of Earth: burning colonies, dead families, empty skies. Rage was the fuel, and duty was the fire. In orbit around Jupiter, a secret base opened its gates to black ships that had no names. They carried equipment wrapped in steel and locked behind codes known only to a few. The crews who worked on them wore no badges, no colors of any nation. They belonged to something greater now. They belonged to Earth itself. Rumors began to drift through the colonies. People spoke in low voices of strange signals moving between planets. They spoke of cargo runs that never returned, of entire factories going dark without warning. Some said a weapon was being built. Others claimed it was only a dream to keep hope alive. The truth was far more than a weapon. It was a fleet. The council knew something was happening. Their spies saw the mining rush. They saw trade cut off and shipping routes close. Reports flowed into the council chambers, but the delegates only laughed. "They are desperate," said the Vargan ambassador, his forearms moving in a mocking gesture. "Let them build their little toys. It will not matter." The others agreed. To them, humans were still young, still weak, still crawling among the stars like children. No one believed a Tier 2 species could rise against an empire that ruled for 1,000 years. No one imagined what humans had planned. On Earth, deep under mountains and seas, vault doors opened that had been closed for decades. Men and women in white coats walked down long halls lined with warning signs. They carried cases that needed 3 keys and a code spoken by 2 voices at once. Inside those cases lay cores of machines that should never exist. Machines built for a war that was never meant to come. In a dark chamber under the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Ross stood before a glass wall. Behind it rested a shape that seemed to drink the light. A black hull, long as a city, with edges sharp as knives. Along its spine ran a line of silent cannons, each one larger than any weapon ever placed on a ship before. Its engines were sleeping giants, coiled with power that could tear space like paper. An engineer walked up to Ross and spoke in a voice heavy with awe. "She will be ready in 2 months, Admiral. If nothing fails." Ross did not look away from the dark hull. "Nothing will fail. If it does, there is no tomorrow." The engineer swallowed hard and nodded. No one wanted to imagine what would happen if Earth failed. Failure meant chains for every human world. Failure meant the Vargans would burn the blue planet to ash. Across the network, coded messages flashed between command posts. The words were short, stripped of emotion. Move assets. Secure lanes. Lock protocols. Prepare Phase 2. New soldiers were called from every corner of the system. They came from mining camps, research labs, farms, and streets. They trained without rest, learning weapons no one had ever seen. Rifles that could punch holes through a tank. Armor that turned men into living fortresses. Dropships that fell like thunder and hit like hammers. The scientists worked without sleep. They gave the soldiers tools that seemed like magic to anyone else. Rail cannons that could tear a cruiser in half. Stealth drives that turned ships into ghosts. Kinetic slugs that carried the weight of mountains and the speed of storms. All of it was hidden from the galaxy. To the outside, Earth was silent. No words came from their diplomats. No pleas for peace, no talks of surrender. The transmissions that once begged for help had stopped. The Council called it fear. The Vargans called it wisdom. Both were wrong. The silence was not fear. The silence was the sound of a blade being drawn. And then, one night, as the sun slid behind the curve of the earth, a signal left the planet. It crossed the void in a whisper only 12 ships heard. It was simple. It was final. Phase 1 complete. Begin retaliation. Engines woke. Shadows moved. The storm was coming. The black of space was quiet. Stars burned like frozen fires, and ships drifted in the endless dark. On the edge of Vargan territory, a convoy of heavy carriers moved along its route. Each ship was a floating fortress, thick with guns and armored hulls. Thousands of tons of supplies rested in their holds, enough to feed an army for months. Their escort ships kept close watch, scanning the void for threats. They found nothing. The space around them seemed empty. No enemy ship, no sign of danger. The Vargan commander stood on the bridge of the lead carrier and felt at ease. The humans were still far away. They were weak and broken. They had no fleet left, or so the council had said. The commander walked to the viewing glass and looked out at the stars. Behind him, his officers checked screens and spoke in low voices. It was calm, almost peaceful. That calm ended in less than a second. The first explosion came without warning. A flash of white light ripped through the dark, striking one of the escort ships. Its hull burst open like paper, spilling fire and metal into the void. Before anyone could react, a second blast tore through another escort. Then a third. The convoy broke into panic as alarms screamed across every ship. "Contact, contact, contact," shouted one of the Vargan officers. His voice was full of shock. Where did they come from? But no one could answer. The screens showed nothing. The sensors read empty space. The attackers were invisible. In the silence of the void, shapes began to appear like shadows breaking free from night. Human warships slid into view, black against black, their hulls drinking the starlight. No markings, no signals, only the faint glow of engines that burned cold and blue. They came in fast and silent. At the front was a ship larger than anything the Vargans had seen from Earth before. Its sides carried rows of heavy cannons that glimmered like steel teeth. Along its spine rested a single massive railgun, stretching the length of the ship. Its barrel glowed faintly as it charged. The Vargan commander froze in shock. "Impossible," he whispered. "Humans cannot build this." The first human volley cut through space like a blade. Rail slugs screamed at speeds faster than light sensors could track. Each one carried the weight of a mountain and the force of a storm. When they hit, Vargan ships split apart in showers of fire and molten metal. Whole decks burned in seconds. The convoy broke into chaos. Vargan captains shouted orders to fire back, but their guns hit nothing. Human ships moved like ghosts, vanishing from scans, striking from angles no one expected. Every time the Vargans aimed, the targets were already gone. Inside the lead human ship, Admiral Ross stood on the command deck. His face was calm, but his eyes were hard. "Status," he said. "Convoy escort down to 50%, replied the tactical officer. "Primary carrier shields are breaking." "Good," Ross said. "Lock the rail. Target their flagship." The great gun at the center of the ship began to glow brighter. Magnetic coils hummed like thunder. Energy pulsed down the length of the barrel. In the silence of space, the sound was felt more than heard, a deep vibration that shook the deck. "Fire," said Ross. The shot ripped forward, a streak of silver that vanished into the void and struck the Vargan flagship with the power of a falling world. The ship's shields cracked like glass. Its hull tore open from bow to stern, venting fire and bodies into space. The blast lit up the dark like a new sun. For a moment, the convoy froze in shock. Then the panic began. The surviving Vargan ships turned and ran, engines burning hot as they fled into deep space. Behind them, the human fleet held its ground like a wall of iron. No pursuit was ordered. There was no need. The message was clear. Ross looked at the wreckage of the convoy drifting in silence. He spoke in a low voice, but every officer heard him. "Send the transmission." 3 words only. The comm officer nodded and typed the signal. Across the human fleet, the same words flashed on every screen. "Justice has begun." Far away, in the core worlds of the Vargan Empire, the first reports arrived. At first, they were ignored. Then came more reports. Then came silence, as entire routes went dark. In the halls of the Galactic Council, the Vargan delegate slammed his fists on the table. His voice shook the chamber. They dare to strike us." The council listened, but no answer came. For the first time in centuries, fear touched the edges of their calm voices. No one had expected this. No one had believed humans could rise so fast. But the rise had begun, and it would not stop. The galaxy was no longer quiet. Every day, new reports reached the council chambers. Supply lines cut. Outposts destroyed. Vargan fleets lost without trace. What began as whispers now thundered like a storm across the stars. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, the voices of delegates rose in panic. Holograms floated above the circle, showing shattered ships and burning worlds. A map of Vargan space glowed red with countless marks. "How can this happen?" cried a delegate from the Rythan League. His long fingers tapped the glowing map. "Entire sectors have gone dark." "Who is doing this?" "It is them," hissed the Vargan representative. His voice shook with fury. "The humans, they strike our fleets like shadows. They come from nowhere and vanish. This is war." The council chair raised a hand, but the chamber was chaos. Fear and anger clashed like storms. Finally, the chair spoke with a voice heavy as stone. "Bring proof. We cannot act on rumors." The Vargan delegate slammed a claw on the table. His eyes burned like black fire. "Proof?" he spat. "You want proof? Look at this." He pressed a control. The air filled with light as a recording appeared above the council floor. It was grainy, but clear enough to show a black shape gliding through space. It was a ship, long and sharp as a blade. Around it burned the wreckage of Vargan cruisers. Then the view turned white as a rail slug tore through the flagship, breaking it in half. Gasps filled the hall. Delegates stared in silence. No one had seen such power from a Tier 2 species before. The ship was larger than any known human design. Its weapons were beyond anything in the archives. "This is real," the Vargan said coldly. "This is what they have built. And this is only one ship. Imagine how many more they hide." A deep unease spread across the room. The council had dismissed humans as young and weak. Now they saw a weapon that could tear through an empire's heart. The arrogance of centuries cracked in a single moment. Far from the Council worlds, in the black seas of space, the human fleet grew bolder. No longer did they strike and fade. Now they struck and stayed. Above the red world of Tarvos, a Vargan military hub, human ships came in waves. Their black hulls moved like shadows, their engines burning cold blue. Railguns fired slugs that glowed as they tore through enemy shields. Kinetic impacts shook the planet's sky with storms of fire. Vargan defense ships rushed to fight, but the battle ended before it began. Human stealth drives made targeting useless. Their weapons cut through armor like paper. One by one, Vargan ships broke apart, spilling flame into the void. When the last gun fell silent, the humans made their move. Dropships dived from the sky like burning spears. They pierced the clouds and hit the surface with the weight of meteors. Soldiers in black armor stormed the bases with perfect precision. Doors shattered. Control towers fell. In less than 2 hours, Tarvos was under human control. No civilians were harmed. The humans took prisoners but spilled no needless blood. They fought with fury, but also with rules. They were not savages. They were soldiers on a mission of justice. On the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Ross watched the red planet turning under the light of a dying sun. His officers stood ready for orders. "Status," Ross said. "Planet secured," answered Commander Vila. "All Vargan forces surrendered. Minimal losses on our side." Ross nodded slowly. "Transmit the message." Vila turned to the comm station. The signal went out across the galaxy, translated into every tongue. The words were few, but they burned like fire in the hearts of all who heard them. "This is Earth. We warned you. You chose silence. Now we bring justice." The message spread faster than light, flashing across trade routes, pirate channels, and government lines. In markets and palaces, in ships and slums, beings of 1,000 species heard it and felt the same chill. Earth was no longer a whisper. Earth was a storm. In the council chamber, the message played on every screen. Silence filled the hall. No one spoke. No one moved. For the first time in ages, the rulers of the galaxy felt fear. Some delegates turned to the Vargan ambassador with cold eyes. "You brought this on us," one said. "Your greed started this fire." But the Vargan ignored them. His mind was far away, thinking of worlds that now burned under human guns. Thinking of fleets shattered like glass. Thinking of an enemy that had risen from the dust of a death world and become something no empire could stop. And this was only the beginning. The Vargan Empire had never known fear. Generals had walked across battlefields with pride. Worlds had fallen under their command without question. But now, the stars themselves seemed to betray them. One by one, their fleets vanished. Supply lines failed. Command stations went silent. The humans had come, and nothing could stop them. On the bridge of the Vargan flagship Drazel, Admiral Corvan stared at the screens in disbelief. Explosions lit the void outside. His ships were falling apart. Entire squadrons disappeared before his eyes. Panic spread among the crew. The order to attack had no effect. Every volley missed the humans. Every maneuver failed. "They are everywhere and nowhere," Corvan growled. "They move like ghosts." One of his officers, a young Vargan with scales still soft and unscarred, shook in fear. "Admiral, what do we do?" Corvan slammed a claw on the console. "Do not ask what. Survive if you can. The humans will not stop in orbit above Vargan Prime." The humans made their next move. The black warships gathered in formation. At the center, the super dreadnought, larger than any ship the galaxy had ever seen, prepared its ultimate weapon. The mass driver that ran along its spine hummed with energy. It did not destroy planets. Instead, it shattered the power of the enemy's fleets in a single strike. On the surface, Vargan generals watched helplessly as their fleets were torn apart. Ships that had been feared for centuries fell like toys. The super dreadnought fired again, a pulse that cut through shields and armor as if they were paper. The Vargan fleet screamed in silence as the energy tore through them. In less than a day, more than half the armada was gone. Corven felt his pride shatter. He had commanded thousands of ships. He had never failed before. But the humans were not just soldiers. They were something greater. They were a force born from a world that had survived death itself. On the ground, Vargan citizens watched the sky burn. Their cities were untouched for now, but the destruction above was impossible to ignore. Entire fleets had disappeared in hours. Rumors spread quickly. The humans had arrived not to negotiate but to punish. Admiral Ross watched the battle from the command deck of the flagship Eclipse. His face was calm, but his mind moved faster than any computer. Reports of enemy movements streamed in. Target after target was destroyed with precision. Human soldiers and engineers had prepared for every scenario. Nothing was left to chance. "Commander Vila," Ross said, "prepare the boarding teams. The flagship is next." "Yes, Admiral," Vila replied. "Teams are ready and waiting." Dropships left the fleet and descended on the crippled flagship. Soldiers moved like shadows, silent and deadly. They breached doors and control towers with perfect timing. Vargan crews tried to fight, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. Resistance ended quickly. The humans captured the ship without unnecessary bloodshed. Back on the bridge of the Eclipse, Ross watched the remaining Vargan fleet scatter. "Send a message," he said. The comm officer typed quickly. Across every channel, across every planet, the same words appeared: "Resistance is over. Surrender now or face total defeat." In the Vargan capitals, the leaders received the message with growing horror. Their empire had never known such speed of destruction. Their fleets had crumbled in days. Entire sectors were silent. They realized, finally, that the humans were not a species to be underestimated. Corven stared at the remaining ships under his command. They were few, broken, and lost. He felt the weight of failure press down on him. His pride, his honor, his empire, everything had been shattered by a species he had thought weak. The humans, meanwhile, showed no signs of stopping. Their fleets moved with discipline and order. No civilian settlements were touched. Their strikes were precise. Justice was their guide, not revenge. The galaxy had never seen such controlled power. By the end of the cycle, the Vargan Empire was in chaos. Their fleets had collapsed. Command structures had failed. Planets trembled under the threat of human control. News reached the Galactic Council, and for the first time, every delegate understood the same terrifying truth. Humans were no longer a minor species. They were a force capable of reshaping the galaxy. Ross turned from the viewing screen. His officers waited for orders. "Begin securing the remaining systems," he said. "We show them the mercy we wish they had shown us." Human soldiers and engineers moved to enforce order and ensure no further chaos. They took prisoners but treated them with fairness. Every step showed that humans were disciplined and just. They fought with fury, but they were not cruel. They fought with purpose. The message was clear. Any empire that underestimated humans would fall. Any species that ignored warnings would suffer. The galaxy would remember this moment forever. And through all the chaos and fear, one thought burned in every human mind. They had survived impossible odds on their home planet. They had endured death and destruction. And now, the galaxy would see the strength of Earth. The collapse of the Vargan Empire was not just a battle. It was a revelation. The Galactic Council had never been so silent. The destruction of the Vargan fleets had shaken every corner of the galaxy. Delegates whispered in corners, scanning the hollow screens for more reports. Messages from worlds long thought loyal were filled with fear. The humans had proven their strength, and no one knew what they would do next. The council chair, a round being with a glass-like face, pounded the gavel. "Order must be restored," the chair said. "The species known as humans have shown power beyond calculation. We summon their representatives to the council immediately." Across Earth, news of the summons spread in secure channels. In the capitals, humans prepared their envoys. Admiral Ross, President Hale, and a small team of senior officers and scientists were chosen. They would enter the council chambers not as petitioners, but as equals. In the hidden starships above Earth, the envoys traveled silently. Their ships were sleek, black, and strong. They carried no unnecessary crews, only those essential for the meeting. Every detail had been considered. Every precaution taken. The humans did not rush. They moved with calm and discipline. Inside the council chambers, delegates gathered for what they called an historic event. Many species had never seen a human face in person. Some whispered questions. Others made bets on whether humans would tremble before the council. They would be wrong. The doors opened, and the human envoys entered. Silence fell immediately. Every eye followed them. Humans were of average height, with plain uniforms, no adornments, no symbols of power. But their presence filled the room. There was a quiet confidence in their step, a calm control in their eyes. President Hale spoke first. Her voice was clear and steady. "We come in response to your summons. We are here to discuss the future of the galaxy, but also to remind you of the cost of ignoring justice." Delegates whispered and shuffled. The Vargan representative, whose empire was now crippled, seated in silence. He could not speak, could not act, and could not comprehend the scale of human power. Holographic screens around the chamber activated. They displayed human fleets, systems under control, and ships that moved faster and struck harder than any known technology. The council watched in disbelief. Every ship, every weapon, every formation was a warning and a statement. Humans had come prepared, and they had shown restraint while demonstrating strength. A council member from the Rythan League stepped forward. "How is it possible that humans created this technology so quickly?" he asked. Ross smiled faintly. "We prepared for centuries. Every threat was studied. Every challenge anticipated. Our survival depended on it. We are not reckless. We are ready." Another delegate spoke, voice shaking. "Do you expect us to accept your control?" President Hale shook her head. "Not control. Order. Justice. We do not seek to dominate. We seek to prevent the chaos that the council allowed to grow unchecked. We warned you. You ignored the warnings. We acted to protect our people. And now we offer guidance for the galaxy." The Vargan delegate stood suddenly. His voice was harsh. "You dare lecture the council?" Humans. Hale's gaze met his. "We lecture no one. We speak truth. Your empire attacked ours. The council did nothing. We responded. The galaxy must understand that ignoring the weak leads to consequences." The chair of the council looked around the chamber. Delegates were pale, their confidence shaken. For the first time, they realized that humans were no ordinary species. They were disciplined, intelligent, and powerful beyond measure. Their methods were precise. Their mercy was selective but fair. "Your actions have forced change," said the chair. "We must acknowledge this. What do you request?" Hale stepped closer to the central hollow. "Reforms in the council. Rules to protect all species from unchecked aggression. Alliances with those who respect justice. And a clear warning to those who would threaten peace. The galaxy must learn that silence in the face of danger is no longer acceptable." There were murmurs among the delegates. Some species secretly nodded. Some trembled with fear. The humans did not care for applause. Their eyes were calm, steady, and filled with determination. Ross turned to the council chair. We will cooperate with those who respect life. But make no mistake. Those who do not will face consequences similar to the Vargans. We offer peace, but we are prepared for war. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then one by one, delegates lowered their heads. The weight of reality had fallen upon them. Humans were not just survivors of a death world. They were a force capable of reshaping the galaxy. Outside the council chambers, messages spread to every world. The galaxy had seen humans in action. The old arrogance of centuries shattered. Rumors of alliances and new trade agreements began, but all knew one truth. Humans had risen, and the galaxy would never be the same again. President Hale and Admiral Ross returned to their ships. They looked at each other in quiet understanding. The council had been stunned into silence. Justice had been delivered. But the work had only begun. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would not forget. And as Earth's black ships glided silently back toward home, every pilot, every soldier, every engineer understood the truth. Survival had forged power, power demanded respect, and respect was something the galaxy would now pay to the species that endured the deadliest world.